Good day. Thank you for the organizers of AI Expo for including us in this prestigious program. I'll talk to you about the work that the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution is doing around inclusive digital transformation. Now, our presentation today is going to cover just an introduction to the center, but the most focus would be on showcasing the inclusive digital transformation through one of our projects in the center. Before I do that, I'll also cover just briefly in terms of the project methodology, as well as giving you a summary of some of our projects. Now, the center is an initiative of the Department of Science and Innovation. It is managed and operated by the CSIR. And in its operation, it has forged partnership with the World Economic Forum to be able to share the insights with the network that exists outside the country. Now, the center, as I've highlighted, it's just an initiative of a national government, but it has business partners in both its center formation as well as in its project, as well as government partners that mostly come in terms of the projects that the center runs. The center was developed, initiated with the purpose of creating a collaborative platform, mainly for its business partners to work with government and academia to co-design, prototype, test, and refine various enablers for adoption of the C4IR technologies. The second, part of the purpose is to develop and build a national capability in technology governance, with a real focus on accelerating the adoption of the converging and transformative technologies in this particular era. The third aspect is to showcase inclusive digital transformation. Now, we highlight inclusive digital transformation there because our pure focus is to provide the assistance and advice to SMMES on their digital transformation and act as a platform to facilitate experimentations with both processes and technologies to inform their own operations and business models. The final part of our purpose is to catalyze industry transformation by providing learning opportunities for partner employees, academic partners, and the general public through our fellowship and awareness programs. Today, we will focus a bit more on the showcasing of inclusive digital transformation, but in other presentations, we can cover all the other aspects. Now, the focus of the center, it's on two really aspects where we want to make sure that our impact is felt. It's on the Industry 4.0 in South Africa, and this we can extend to other countries as well through the implementation of the technologies. The second aspect is to assist the country in its transition towards a data-based digital economy, to improve its competitiveness and become relevant global player, as well as to accelerate digitization of government. Now, the initial technologies that we are considering here are around artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, blockchain, as well as a data policy in general. Now, the idea is that this is not the only ones that we'll be dealing with. In future, we are looking at extension to the bioeconomy as well as the agri-tech. So this is about the center, just a brief overview of the center. In its operation, it has adopted a generic project methodology that then allows us as a center to Now, our presentation today is going to cover just an introduction to the center, but the most focus would be on showcasing the inclusive digital transformation through one of our projects in the center. Before I do that, I'll also cover just briefly in terms of the project methodology, as well as giving you a summary of some of our projects to accelerate our work within 6 to 18 months, and have during that particular period have various outputs from our projects. So the projects involve building communities of interest. Those could be of interest, purpose, or action through the public-private partnerships as well as the civil society sectors to identify key levers for impact and then trigger that systemic change. Now, this model has 4 phases. The first phase is at the start, where importantly we look at assessing the governance gaps. So in a project, if we can be able to assess the governance gap, whether the governance gap could be the industry standards, or it could be the policy, it could be the regulation, it could be just the general knowledge about the area. We capture that in that particular area, and then seek the mandate to address that particular gap with the relevant stakeholders. As it says, the stakeholders could either be primary stakeholders, could either be private, it could be government, or it could also be both in some of the cases. Then once that is the case, we then have agreed that we can go ahead and address this particular gap. We then design a community to support the project and develop potential outputs with the key stakeholders. Ideally, we do crowdsource all the ideas and learnings even from the wider network within our World Economic Forum network. The phase 3 would be to deploy the outputs. Now, even if we are looking at the new regulation, if you are looking at the new regulation as an output, it is important to be able to deploy that in a prototype manner in a smaller area, to just understand whether that policy or regulation that we have developed can actually support the innovation that we want to have. So that's very important to be able to deploy this in various formats. Now, I will highlight when I go to the project that we are doing that there are 2 ways in which we can be able to deploy that. Some of them will include the actual technology implementations, whilst in some cases it will just be the testing of whether the deployment of that particular tool will enable innovation or not. The final phase is the scale-up of that particular output to many areas. It could actually be within the same sector that we have tested with, or it could be outside that sector, or it could be in a geographical area, as it could be the case that we would have tested it in South Africa, then we could look into expanding it globally. So in order to work on this particular project, as it says, the project methodology is hinging on creating these communities. And these communities are formed through different types of partners. And the other first part of partners are the project partners, who actually have bigger interest in the project and the governance of it. And they don't make financial or other resource contributions to the delivery of the project. While the knowledge partners, they participate in the communities that we form, and they provide key information that will enable us to be able to deliver on the project. As an example, you could have a government department that could provide its know-how in terms of the programs that they are running, but they may not have bigger interest in driving the project itself, but they can contribute in terms of the programs that they are running in terms of that knowledge. And we can have academic partners who can come and contribute their knowledge in the particular technology or in the application of that particular technology in the policy. So the tools that come out from the projects that we run depend on really the level at which the gap is, and once we have assessed the gap, we can just determine whether all we need to do is just to have an insight output or a white paper that really provides a thought leadership in the key technology, and having done that, we could actually take it further into looking at the governance model. But in some cases, you may find that there's enough knowledge about the gaps and how to address them. And maybe there are existing policies that are there. All we need to do is just to look at the frameworks for cooperation in terms of the use of this particular technology. The final part will be where there is a big gap in the regulatory framework, and we then would go and work with the government entities to be able to define those, or industry standards may be there that may be the bigger gap. So having just covered how we cover our work and the types of the output that you'll expect from the projects that the center does, now, our presentation today is going to cover just an introduction to the center, but the most focus would be on showcasing the inclusive digital transformation through one of our projects in the center. Before I do that, I'll also cover just briefly in terms of the project methodology, as well as giving you a summary of some of our projects. The next part I just wanted to highlight in terms of the projects that we are working on. You will see in this summary here that 4 of those projects are in development, and 2 of them are already active. So we will focus on one that is already active. The first one, that is accelerating the impact of IoT technologies, particularly because this is the one that actually focuses on the inclusive digital transformation aspect that I highlighted at the beginning. That will be the focus of this. Now, our presentation today is going to cover just an introduction to the center, but the most focus would be on showcasing the inclusive digital transformation through one of our projects in the center. Before I do that, I'll also cover just briefly in terms of the project methodology, as well as giving you a summary of some of our projects presentation. Just briefly, this is not an attempt to provide a definitive definition of what digital transformation is. I understand, as most of you understand, that digital transformation may mean very different things to different people. However, more generic is that it tends to be looked at as what happens when the business rethink its own processes. So it has to be a rethinking of the processes, the services, and the products in terms of what is possible when you use the current technology. So it's not necessarily just digitalization, but it's a rethink of all of those processes. And it has a potential really to help company increase its own speed to market. It could be workforce productivity and stability. It could also be just other areas of its own operations. And digital transformation has a lot of potential in many areas of the business. What then tends to be the case is that industrial Internet of Things and data analytics are the technologies driving the digital transformation in most primary and secondary sectors. I must highlight that these are not the only ones, but these are the dominant technologies that are driving the digital transformation across many of those. And therefore, this particular project that I'll be talking about, it's highlighting our focus on assisting the SMMEs to also benefit from digital transformation by adopting these two technologies as well as other technologies, but primarily these two technologies in their operations and the business models. So the project is called Accelerating the Impact of IoT Technologies by SMMEs, and its bigger goal is enable IoT solutions to be implemented better, faster, and more responsibly by SMMEs in key sectors. The first pilot that we are looking at is on the manufacturing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this particular project will end up just looking at the manufacturing. We are investigating other sectors, such as in the aftermarket of the automotive as well as in agriculture. So the current project is planned to complete in March 2022 with the deployment of an initial pilot planned in October of 2021. So the key partners in the projects here currently from the project delivery partners, and these are the partners that form our the project advisory committee, or maybe we can call it a steering committee for that. And these are the these are the partners on the left. We do have a few knowledge partners that are on board. Those are the people that participate in various groupings that we have, but are not currently represented in the project partners. It does not mean that when they are ready to commit more resources into the project, cannot move into the project partnerships. But we are engaging them on that particular aspect. We still welcome many other knowledge partners that can contribute their know-how to the project. I will highlight the key skills that we require with the new types of partners that we'll be bringing in as we go along. The streams here, and I want to just highlight that the streams in this particular project, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will be the streams in every project. It's the policy and the implementation. Now, in some projects, we don't have the implementation aspect, which then means the deployment phase may be done through workshops, where we then test the applicability of a particular policy framework that we may have. In this particular project, what we are doing is to have both the policy and looking at all the policy elements, as well as to showcase the actual deployment of that. And we do the work according to the 3 working groups that we have formed. So the policy is driven by policy analysis work group, whereas the implementation is driven by 2 groupings. And they are subdivided along the lines of those that are supporting the SMMEs in the particular sector, and those that are providing the services from the digital sector, from the IoT sector. So there is more of the demand from the SMME engagement support group, and more from the supply side on the vendor identification and management work group. So those groups work hand in hand to make sure that they drive the implementation aspect of the project, while the policy continues on the policy side. Just highlight what the policy would be covering in this particular case. And the objectives that we are looking at is, are just two areas. First, we need to look at where SMMEs need support with IIoT, and our hypothesis at this particular point is that they will be requiring the strategic planning, the procurement and implementation, as well as operational readiness, understanding of that. So we will be running the maturity assessment to be able to assist us with all of those. And we also ask, how can government help? And there are a number of areas in which government can help. They could help with financial support. Most governments do have the support packages to drive the SMME growth in the countries. It could be with the expert support or resources, and it could be with the awareness and the community building, as well as industry cooperation mechanisms that they can put in place. So these ones, all of those things will be coming in through what we will have as an implementation guide that will be prototyped for the SMMEs. So the policy framework would be then prototyped by the three departments basically, Department of Trade, Industry and Cooperation, Department of Science and Innovation, as well as Department of Small Business Development, where the output will then be a white paper that shows how all of these tools could work together in order to support the development of the SMMEs. So this is from the policy side, and from the implementation side, we have highlighted that the support there will be the actual implementation of IoT tools within the operations of the selected SMMEs that we'll be working with. So the additional partners that we are recruiting in this particular month to be able to support those would be, some of them will be more on the subject matter experts that will actually be dealing with the deployment of those IoT systems into the SMME operations, as well as the IoT integration partners. I must highlight that we do already have parts of that from within the partners that we have. Not everything that we highlighted here we don't have, but we will be going out on a process to be able to recruit the partners, particularly with the IoT integration in some of the parts. So this last two slides really are just to highlight some of the use cases that we are considering. It's not a full set of use cases. I would highlight that to understand the full set of the use cases, we will have to assess the level of development of the SMMEs in terms of the usage of technology, and also to understand what is already in their plans where there is a need to provide additional assistance there. So this on this particular page, it could be more on the dashboarding or gamification performance management, where the more of the second one of the gamification will help a lot in terms of giving incentives and to the employees to increase their productivity on the factory floor, whilst the dashboarding enables a real-time understanding of what is happening in terms of all the operations of the factory, if it is in the case of the manufacturing, and it could be also in the case of in the agriculture space, to understand whether your crops, if you are a crop farmer, to understand whether your crops are growing at the rate at which you are expecting which also could affect whether they will actually get to the market at the particular time that you had envisaged. So the other two is more on the process automation as well as predictive maintenance, and most of those things apply a lot more when you are dealing in the manufacturing side, but it could be even in other areas, but mostly in the manufacturing areas where you want to actually automate certain processes within your system, or you want to be able to monitor the condition of your equipment that you are using and predict the downtimes to be able to reduce the severity of those downtimes. So this is the work that we are doing in that particular case, and I'll just re-highlight that the work that we do covers the different areas, and in this particular area we have highlighted where we are showcasing an inclusive digital transformation, and our focus is more of saying let's also assist those that are in the small business era to come back into the digital transformation route as well. So this is our contacts. You can contact me at those that address. I'm the center head for the center now. You can also reach the rest of my team at the SAC4IR at csir.co.za. Thank you.